Now, I do think that there is one cliche, one plot device, one trope that you should never, ever, ever use. I feel as strongly about this as I feel about flashbacks. Romance, tension, or plot trouble or conflict that is caused by poor communication. No, just no. I hate that.
Not that it doesn't happen.
I understand, but it is so dumb. Like that, you can't just open your mouth and say, actually, this is what happened. Like, does it have to be a 3-week fight that rips you apart and sets up? Like, it drives me insane. I can't.
Releasing your inner dragon.
So, Drake, if we're talking about romantic subplots, do you think that there is any genre where you should not have a romantic subplot ever?
I don't think so. I don't think there's any genre that can't benefit from. I think it's very genre irrelevant.
Obviously, boring middle grade fiction. Don't anybody get weird in the comments. Like,
But I mean,
yes,
we're not.
like
I think you can have romance in middle grade fiction. I mean, look at Harry Potter and all of that. There's a difference in having romance and then just like, shifting, because there's some Harry Potter shift stuff out there. That's not appropriate for a 10-year-old child to read. But this, I mean, I remember we went out on my son's first date with his first girlfriend. It was one of my best friend's daughters. They were both 5, maybe 6. All the families went out together to dinner. I think we went to TGI Fridays. And but he actually asked her out. He dressed up for it. He pulled her chair out. He, talked to her for, during the dinner and all this stuff. But I mean, that's cute. It's cute. It's wholesome. It's whatever. So here's where I was going with it, though. I think that it is not appropriate depending on the thematic element. So like horror might be a lot harder to work in because you're actually muddying the water. So my go-to example for this is always going to be Finding Nemo. So Finding Nemo, there's no romance in. Because I mean, if you look at all the others, there's romance in almost every Disney movie that's out there. But when you look at Finding Nemo, there's no romance. Why? Why is there no romance in Finding Nemo? Because Marlin's story is about what type of parent to be, which is grounded in fear. And Nemo's story is a coming of age story, which is about fear. It's about the fear of being on your alone for the first time. And so romance is based in hope and excitement and, giddiness and good. And so if we had because I mean, Marlin is a widower, Dory is single and crazy, but still single. There's no reason why. There's nothing story-wise preventing those two from going, hey, we're both on this adventure together. We could be rubbing fins. There's nothing there that would prevent that from a story standpoint. What prevents it is the thematic elements are all based in fear, and now throwing in a theme, a subplot that the theme is based in hope is not, it's not going to help the story. And so, there are genres that I think are harder. I mean, I think it's harder to work romance into a horror movie or whatever.
Yeah.
But look at Speed. I mean, we're on a bus and if we go under 50 miles an hour, we'll blow up and die. And then there's still these moments where, Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock are like all nose to nose and like,
Yeah.
like, and we're on a bus driving down the highway, running into people, and we still have the romantic moments. So,
Yes.
and it works in that because they don't do what I did. They don't do the actual, hearts and romance and all that. It's because they even pick on it in that movie, which I really liked, because they get together and then at the end of it, they're like, so we're gonna we're going to hook up obviously after this. And they're like, 90% of all relationships that are built during a time of high stress don't work out. And so like they even are like, we know why we're attracted to each other. We're attracted because we were literally almost killed. And so now we're just like, we got a bone because we almost died.
Yeah.
So, but they even, like I said, they even worked it into the plot
Yeah.
that the characters both knew exactly why they feel this way about each other. So I
The
thought that,
life affirming action.
yeah, it was
reaction.
that, it was that, oh crap, I could have died and not gotten laid one last time. Let's just do this.
I know too much about biology. You say that, and my thought is, it's not actually about getting laid one last time. It's your genetic instinct crying, give the genes another chance.
Baby,
Have a baby. Have a baby. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, romance leads to something. It's still on topic. What
Yeah.
about you? I mean, what do you feel about different genres or, the thematic elements that I brought up?
So I think that some of the horror genres would really suffer if you try to work actual romance in it. Like if I think of psychological horrors, can you imagine if they try to work a romance into Silence of the Lambs? Um, that would not have, something would have suffered. But like you, I more feel like it depends on the story you're telling and how central the romance is going to be to that story, and whether it's going to help your plot or whether it's going to distract from your plot.
Yeah. I mean, so you say that about Silence of the Lambs, but there was literally the entirety of Hannibal was a romance. Now, it was a screwed up romance between two dudes that at least one of them probably wasn't, swinging that way.
Mm.
But it was 100% a romance. It was a fatal attraction kind of. I mean, fatal attraction's another one that has a totally screwed up romance. Technically, if you wanted to get more esoterical, Misery is a romance. She's just in love with his story, not the writer. She didn't care about the writer because she'll do anything to that guy to get what she loves out of it. But no, Hannibal is just this toxic relationship between Hannibal and that cop. I can't think of his name.
Yeah. The TV series. Yeah.
Yeah, the TV
Yeah.
series. So
Yeah.
it is 100%, and it's that psychological thing. So it's a psychological thriller. So we have this psychological relationship.
Yeah.
If you really pay attention to that, Hannibal believes that he can make the cop compatible with him so that he can have somebody to connect with on an emotional, deep level.
But look at how central they made that romance to the story. Right? They didn't, what I'm getting at is like, you can't have the main thing be like the psychological horror of dealing with Hannibal in a prison cell, trying to get information on Wild Bill,
Right.
and shoehorn in a relationship from like somewhere else.
Or even from Clarice and Hannibal themselves.
Yeah.
Like that wouldn't work because that story would not play into that. Whereas how they got Hannibal and that other cop together, the male version of Clarice, it lended to them. And we're going to talk about a few things of what we want to do. And that's what they did. They gave them opportunity and a commonality and, different things like that Clarice doesn't have with him in Silence of the Lambs. So yeah, I mean, but both are the same story. Both are very much psychological thrillers. One, you can't put a romance in it. It wouldn't work. The other one, literally the entire story. You don't realize it for a while. For the first season and a half or so, you don't see it. But if you go back and rewatch it, you're like, oh, Hannibal fell in love. And again, it's not what your traditional romance is, but it's absolutely the first time Hannibal meets that cop, you can see it once you rewatch it. You're like, Oh yeah, no, he totally falls head over heels in love with him. Again, it's a different type of love, but 100%. And then he's just courting him with dead bodies and, you know, horribly
Yeah.
mutilated bodies and all this other stuff. But that is their courtship. I mean, it ends with them hugging each other. It ends with them embracing and like purposefully throwing both of themselves off the cliff. They leave it ambiguous enough that you're like, well, maybe the cop did it because he knew it was the only way that he could end this. But I don't know if it was that or if it was
Actual romance.
right.
Love.
But it's still a romance. That whole story is a
Mm.
romance. It's just a real screwed up, toxic. That's not good for anyone else either, because a lot of people
No.
die in there. It's sort of like the way Thanos, the Infinity Gauntlet went in the comic book.
Yes.
You know, he kills half of the universe as a love gesture.
Yes.
Here's some
Which
roses of billions of dead people.
honestly, it made so much more sense.
Oh, don't even get me started.
I do not like Thanos' motivation in the Avengers
It was
movie
stupid.
series. I don't.
It ruined
But
it
in the
ruined the
comic,
entire thing. It was
comics, it was amazing.
yeah.
He was like,
Yeah.
"My lady love, look at all the people I send unto you."
All right, so let's take this really quickly, Rabbit Chase. And you can add to it or whatever. But so obviously you can't use love because they decided not to put the incarnations in, although then later they put in time for the Loki stuff. So I don't understand. I mean, they kind of reneged on their, oh, we don't want to use the incarnations. But you don't use the incarnations, so there is no love, there is no aspect of love, so he can't do that. But killing people to save resources and all that, he bought about 30 years. So in my lifetime, we doubled our population.
So it's worse than that, right? Because he didn't just kill people. He didn't just kill sentient being. He killed all life.
Right.
Which means all the food, all the plants,
Yeah.
all the resources. So what? You're saving minerals?
Yeah.
Because Cupcake, I hate to break it to you, but the universe being infinite has infinite mineral.
Yeah.
Like every asteroid belt
Yeah.
is a
Well, but I
low
wasn't even
town to give a Texas mining executive a hard on until next year, Tuesday.
yeah. Yeah, but I wasn't even going there. I mean, he's supposed to be the smartest tactician that's ever existed, and he bought himself 30 years.
It is literally the dumbest plan. It is the dumbest plan.
But here's why it would be so easy to fix. Instead, if he had, because this would have been believable. Now it's a little cliche, but whatever. It's still more believable than I'm going to save the world by killing half of all inhabitants. Just have him go, I'm going to live in infamy forever. I'm going to be, no one will beat this record. I'm going to kill half of everything, and I will be the greatest warlord to ever have lived.
Yes.
That's believable. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a good motivation. So he can't kill half the universe to give him as a love, as roses to death, but he could still kill it because he just wants to never be forgotten.
Yes.
And you would never be forgotten if you were the person who killed half of everything.
Yeah. It is an absolutely believable motivation for a supreme narcissist to be like, I am going to be famous. I'm going to be famous to the point that none of you will forget me.
Forever.
Yeah.
This will never go away.
Yeah.
No one's going to forget when half of the universe died.
Yeah.
So, like, that's what pissed me off about that.
Yeah.
But anyway, not going to get into it.
No, we're not. It's a romance.
But the comic book was romance, and that was also amazing. That he's like, oh, I really want to bang this death chick. She's hot. What's the best present I could buy her? I could buy her a Ferrari. No, she didn't care about that. I could take her a trip to Paris. No, she didn't. I could kill half of everybody and give that to her. Like, no one can do that. Like, that's awesome. Like, that's an awesome thing for love. Again, toxic, little toxic.
Little toxic. It's just a smidge.
But definitely romantic, I guess. If you're into
Can't
that
beat it for its grand gesture.
It is a grand gesture. It is. I mean, it's something you can't, if you've been brushing this guy off because he's just annoying and he's not your
Yeah.
type, and you can't really ignore that when he gives you half of the universe is
Yeah.
souls to
Yeah.
have. Like, you know, that's a tough one, even though he's a little ugly, little purple. Um, like that's
But got that weird face growth
weird, yeah,
going
that
on.
weird thing going on, that
I,
weird
I don't want
flesh
to call that a
beard.
beard because I
That's
don't
what
feel like it's a beard. I feel like
I
that's
always
just
call,
skin with cliffs in it.
I call it a flesh beard.
Yeah.
That weird flesh beard that he's got going
Yeah.
on. But I mean, half of all souls. I guess,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
All
that would get
right.
me aroused. So seems like it would do something for death.
So speaking of what would get you aroused, tips for writing romantic relationship arcs.
All right. Yeah. I mean, the internet is rife with tips and tricks and everything like that. I think actually before we do that, I think we need to step back because there's actually two things to kind of think about here. There's first of all writing romantic stories where the entire story is romance, where the theme is romance, the central story is all about it. We're going to touch on that, but I don't think that's really where we
No,
I mean, I do write romance, but I haven't written it in years and
no.
I don't know if I'm gonna get back to it. What we really write is romantic arcs within something else. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about tips for romantic arcs that aren't the story.
Yeah.
So because there's some things that I think they miss. One, you need to build in, like with all motivations, you need to build in a motivation that your character wants that. Like one of the things that I got dinged for in the Genesis saga, and I'm still doing it because I think it's very believable. So our dairy leaves the farm when he's 16 or 17, and he's a 16-year-old dude. And 16-year-old dudes think about food, shiny, and sex. And so he when I introduce him, there's this girl that is hot for him, and she is the one that everybody knows that the two families are already doing because it's arranged marriage society, so they're already doing it, and she's hot to him. I mean, he looks at her in that hot kind of way because he's a 16-year-old filled with hormones, but she is also the symbol of oppression for him. She is his shackle. He knows that he can't have any of his dreams if he does get married to this girl. He's gonna have kids. He's gonna be a farmer for the rest of his life. His dreams of escape and adventure and all this stuff is not gonna happen. So while I have several scenes where he actually looks at, like there's a scene, and again, it's that level of fantasy. So like she twirls and her ankles get exposed one time, and he's like, and yeah, I know that's not really porn today, but that's what it is. He doesn't get to see a girl's ankles, so that's
So
big time for him.
in Way of Kings, they've got the safe hand thing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. There's a fan-made website dedicated to porn of that world that has women in various risque safe hand poses. It's hysterical.
So there's a woman, she's a YouTuber. She has an OnlyFans page.
Yeah.
So she's a YouTuber on the Renaissance and
Yeah.
what's the other one? The Elizabethan, what's that time period called?
Victorian,
Victorian.
Elizabeth.
She's a
Yeah.
she's a historian on Victorian garb. Literally her entire life is all about the garb of the Victorian age.
Yeah.
So she started an OnlyFans page where she dresses up in her Victoria garb and she like shows ankle or something like that. And she's making more money off of that than she ever made as a historian. Like, and all she does is it's just her in her Victorian garb, and then she'll show an ankle or something like that. That's her risque type thing. That's an actual OnlyFans page, and I've never been there. I actually saw her talking about it on YouTube. That's how I learned about it. So anyway,
Yeah.
you have that with our dairy, but then when he gets out, he literally, is like, "Ooh, I like this chick," and the first chick that he comes on, and he's all like there, and then there's another chick that he runs into, and then the third chick is one where is the actual relationship. So I have had people that were like, that's really unrealistic that you had him, rebuff this first one, go after basically anything with a skirt after that, and then mature and find that he wants a deeper relationship. And he doesn't, there's no consummation of anything. He's just, because again, he doesn't have that ability. But then he has the thing. And I'm like, no, that's literally how men kind of are. We're bumbling idiots until we finally realize that there's a deeper connection that we could have.
So, I mean, I can't speak for all women, certainly, but I rebuffed a couple of guys. I got laid a bunch of times, whole bunch of times, and eventually met a guy that I actually liked. You know,
Right.
me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's
But
what I said. I think it works.
when the
But
hormones rage,
right.
like boffing things is what you do.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. When those hormones kick in, I mean, we're
yeah.
animals, literally.
Yeah.
But no, that's so what I'm trying to do with those is I'm setting up the motivation. I'm setting up that he does want a relationship. It's
Yeah.
just that he's 16 and doesn't know what that even means.
Yeah.
And so he has to go through some things and kind of mature a little bit before he actually can do this. So I think, I mean, most people liked it. I'm just saying I've had a few people that are like, you know, I can't believe you just had him, basically try to chase anything with a skirt. Like, yeah, he's 16. That's what 16-year-old boys do.
Isn't
Like,
that normal?
you can put a watermelon in a skirt and they'll be like, oh, like it's just the way it is. But it doesn't mean that it's mature, and it doesn't mean that it's real, and it doesn't mean, and so that's what I was showing with them. So that's where I'm getting to is I just don't think they show that motivation. A lot of romances are really good at this, where they're like, you see the nerdy girl and she's your POV character and no one likes her. And, well, I mean, Miss Congeniality is a great example of that. She is very masculine, very buff. She's pretty. But the guys that actually are like, hey, you're kind of pretty, she punches them in the face. And so other guys are like, I'm not going to hit on her because even though she's kind of hot, she doesn't care. Like that door is closed. And so she has to go on this journey to become, but you also do know that she wants her, because like she punched him in the face and she's like, why did I do that? Like that's not what I wanted to do. I kind of liked that he was talking to me. But then somebody else says something, she punches him in the face. And she's like, damn it, why did I do that? So we get the motivation.
Yeah.
And now the character has to work through those conflicts to get to, but I think that's one of the big things is they don't build in that motivation. They're just like, well, of course they want a relationship. Why wouldn't they want a relationship? Everybody wants a relationship. But if you don't build it in there as a motivation, it's like any other motivation of the character. If it doesn't exist, then it comes out of nowhere.
So I always ask myself this question when I start getting into romantic territory. How much is this going to impact my plot? If this is not really part of my plot, then how much do I want to spend on this? Because this is part of the problem in fantasy. Sometimes people will introduce a relationship because they feel that there should be a romantic relationship. But then they don't spend enough time on it. They don't give those motivations, and basically they don't do anything with the relationship, right? And it's actually just a distraction. And you have to think about this like anything else, plot-wise. What does this relationship do for me? What story does it allow me to tell? And then based on that, what are the motivations for the people who are coming into this relationship? If you just want a sideshow, like I just wanted a political sideshow with Louis, so I just slammed him into an arranged marriage, and because that is the kind of guy he is and the kind of society he grew up in, he did his best to make friends with his wife, and they're married. Like, they're good friends.
They do have an arc.
Yes, they do have an arc, but it's a very much like a done deal arc, right?
No, I'm saying after the marriage.
Yeah, 100%.
They actually then, I mean, they're in the situation, and so it can go one of two ways.
They become friends, they become lovers, and so on. Like, he'll never be a burn with passion kind of guy. That's not,
Right.
But but they become friends and lovers and so on. But I don't spend an inordinate amount of time on it, and it's also why I just slammed them together, because I wanted the politics of the match, not so much the romance.
Mhm. But it also works with the story that you're telling.
Yes. Yeah,
It's a very political story.
exactly.
Yeah, so I think that's the big thing, is they just don't give the motivation. But see, that still gives the motivation. That's
Yeah,
hey, we need this alliance. You're going to marry this chick.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I believe in that. Yeah,
yeah,
okay, all right. So it still is the believable motivation that lets the reader then go into it.
yeah.
And then it can either be a cold relationship where it's like, look, I need children, so I'm gonna boff you once or twice until you get pregnant, and then I have nothing to do with you. I don't even like you. Versus, they actually, what you did with Louis is them becoming friends and actually becoming something.
Yeah.
There's a stand-up comedian, an Indian stand-up comedian, that him and his wife have been together for a couple decades now, but they were arranged marriage. And so
Mm.
part of his set, part of his comedy, he talks about, the arranged marriage and why it's good and why it's bad and all this other stuff. But him and his wife are, you can tell when they're in interviews or whatever, they're best friends. And it
Yeah.
was like, literally, you've never even met this girl and now you're married to her. Good luck.
An arranged marriage doesn't have to be horrible. Like,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
depending on the situation.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So, you know, it's that. So bringing that in early, um, so it doesn't come out of nowhere. Even if the character, so like his love interest isn't even in his story until novel
mm,
2, but I still drop the fact that he does want that connection. It's what he's looking for, while he's also caught up in this adventure to save the world and all this other stuff. Um, so that's one thing. I also think you need to have something that I don't necessarily think that they have to have something in common, although that helps, but they have to have some reason for being together in some way, in the story. There has to be some story motivated reason why they're together.
I feel like there also needs to be um, something that it contributes to the plot
Mhm.
or to the world building. Like, it doesn't have to be something like death or being used against them or kidnapping, or although I've used all of that, like there's
Yeah,
nothing wrong with any of that.
yeah,
But it has to add something to your plot. Otherwise, it's like anything else. Why are you wasting the reader's time with it?
yeah,
Unless you're writing slice of life, cozy fantasy, in which case the relationships are the point, 100% go forth,
right.
right? But that is a genre thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think another big advice that I think a lot of people miss, because when you're not writing romance and it's this subplot, you treat it as such. And I think that's another kind of detriment. You need to make sure that you have moments of those vulnerable, sweet, I like to call them, because in romance, when you're writing romance, one of the big things is the meet cute. That's the
Yeah.
inciting incident, if we're talking about from a hero's journey perspective. You don't do a full-blown meet cute if it's a subplot, although you can still have a meet cute, but it isn't central to the story, so it's more of a this happened and it's a meet cute. But you do need a lot of little meet cutes. You need time to, and again, I love the way you say it. You always say you have to let it breathe. So
Yes.
if it's going to be a subplot, then it needs its own room to breathe. It doesn't, it can't take over the whole breadth of the story,
Hmm.
but it still has to have that moment that it can breathe, and those little meet cutes. So I read one when we were reading our stuff about the emotions. You already read, there was two meet cutes right in a row. It's one because love with his son is still romance, in my opinion, even though it's not, love, that type of love. But there's the
Hmm.
meet cute with him and his son, Clytus and his son, where you're like, oh, I really love this relationship. How sweet is this? And then immediately, he goes into his master bedroom and he's with his wife, and then they off screen, because I don't write sex, but off screen they have sex.
Yeah.
And it's a very romantic moment, and it's a very emotionally charged moment because they may never see each other again, and so
Yeah.
they both know that this is a very pivotal night for them. And even though he's got to get up in like 4 hours, he's still going to take this time to have this. So that's a nice little meet cute moment that builds you into this. Oh, wow, these two really love each other. You know, they're definitely a strong relationship.
And you have to build in those moments between lovers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, it doesn't matter what's going on around you. The whole world can be ending around you. But you still need to build in the little moments, the little touches, the little flavors where people like look at each other and there's love between them, and the whole of their vulnerability. Their hearts are vulnerable to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that needs to be on the page where the reader can experience it.
Because it is real. So me and my wife have now been married 24 years. We were together 2 years prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
Technically three, because we were friends for about a year. We dated for a year. We were engaged for a year, and now we've been married 24 years. We have never been closer than these last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with me getting cancer.
Yeah.
And then this year, she's had heart issues and had to go in for a minor heart surgery.
And no such thing.
That's why I air quoted it for those that can't see me.
Yeah.
Those moments brought, I mean, we were already a great couple. You know, our friends see us as kind of the poster child for a married couple. And yet it pales in comparison to how we are now with each other.
Yeah.
And that it sort of goes back to what we were talking about at speed. It's like, oh crap, we almost died. Like we
Time
need
to do the devil's tango.
right. But it's see, now neither one of us are childbearing.
Yeah.
But we're definitely, it's that, you know, I don't want you to leave without, or I don't want to leave without you knowing how much I actually care for you
Yeah.
and love you. And then it's the same thing on the other side. It's kind of a morbid way to look at it, but and I don't think either of us thought it like that, but it really is a very visceral human thing that, you know, these tragic, so I mean, we're writing adventure, we're writing tragic things that are happening to these characters. That really does make you realize how short life is. I mean, one of the most morbid thoughts that I had the day I was told I had cancer was we had just gotten a little Shih Tzu puppy.
Yeah.
And I came home, and this is horrible to say, but the first thought in my head when I walked in the door, because he greeted me, you know, all excited and all that, I was like, well, crap, you're gonna outlive me. And I was actually jealous of our 8-month-old Shih Tzu puppy, because it's like that.
Yeah.
Like you're supposed, you get pets and they die. Like that's the way this works. And then we get another pet because then they just die. They're pets. And then I had to go, oh yeah, I may not live. I mean, it was the first day I literally had just been told.
Yeah.
So I was still in that shock moment.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's crazy. All I'm saying is, when you're writing these action adventure things, understand what your character is going through. And I think I've always put that on the page, but I guarantee you now it's more impactful to me than it was before all of this happened.
100%.
So that's the same thing with romance. You know, that's why in Speed they get together. That's why, you know, that's why this, I mean, look at one of the classic romances of our generation would be the Titanic. You know, look at that romance and how it blossomed on one cruise ship. And you know,
I mean, Shakespeare wrote the whole tragedy in 3 days.
right.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about tropes and cliches. I feel like we've covered pacing and you know, tips. So in terms of tropes and cliches, I want to say a couple of things. The first is that there is nothing wrong with tropes. It is about your execution of the trope. There is not even that much wrong with a cliche. It's about execution. The thing is, if you're writing romance, You, the author, you need to put your whole heart on the page, right? You need to dig deep and find out how you really feel about love and pour that tears and snot and devil's tango desires all into the words and be vulnerable enough to show that. And then it doesn't matter if you're using a classic triangle, whether you're writing gay or straight or whatever. None of that matters because you are showing what is in your heart.
Yeah.
I feel that that's the first and most important thing. Then in terms of tropes, I am going to speak in defense of love at first sight.
And I guess I'll take devil's advocate and go the other route.
Yeah. So it didn't happen to me. I have very tumultuous, like, 20s. But my sister, at the wonderfully wise age of 19, met this guy at a dance at the university for the medical faculty. She was studying medicine, he was studying medicine. They met that night. The next day, they started going on other dates. 2 weeks later, they were officially dating. 6 months after that, they were engaged. At the end of the year, when she was 20, I think she was either 19 or 20, they married. Like, it was literally just like that. And they're still married. They have 2 wonderful children. They're 2 of the most in love people that I know. And I think that it is perfectly possible to write a love at first sight.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about their relationship was, at the beginning of their relationship, you would walk into a room where they are and you would know that they're in love.
Right.
It was inescapable. They were all over each other. They held hands the whole time. They were connected. Everything about them screamed, we're in love. Now they're still in love and you can still see it, but it's a deeper, more nuanced thing 30 years later, right? But they had things in common. They were both studying medicine, that, you know, there were things, they're both sporty people and so on. But, like, for example, my brother-in-law used to cycle more than he runs, but my sister's a runner. She loves running. She runs half marathons, full marathons, ultra marathons, all the marathons. And he has actually not completely given up cycling, but he cycles far, far less, so that he runs, and rather runs with her, so that they can run together, because they talk to each other while they train, right? So it becomes a thing that they do together. And
so I've had people ask me for relationship advice. This is off the subject, but going down that. Having a successful relationship, and I do this in business, I do this in friendship, and I do this with my wife. Having a successful relationship is actually very simple. Each side must consciously try to give the other side more than they're getting.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is when you have a narcissistic other side, it's a toxic relationship, never going to work. You give, they take, and that's it.
Yeah.
So this only works when you find other people that also buy into that philosophy.
Yeah.
So with me and my wife, she is constantly trying to do more for me than I do for her. And I am constantly trying to do more for her than she's doing for me. And the benefit of that, from a narcissistic side point, it means that I have a human being who is going out of their way to do everything in their power to make me as happy as I can possibly be. And the only cost that it costs me is I just need to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, which makes me happy because I'm a pleaser personality. So, like, pleasing other people makes me happy. But like, that's it. I do that in businesses. I do that with everything. I try to always make sure that the person I'm in a relationship with, I mean, I do it to you. I try to give you more than you give me. I'm not sure I succeed in that, but I do try. So it's just.
So I agree with that philosophy generally, but just to cycle back to and finish up put a bow on the love at first sight thing. If you're going to do love at first sight, the initial attraction should be absolutely overwhelming. It should be ridiculously over the top. And if the relationship is going to work, there needs to be more than the initial
Yep.
attraction.
Yep. Yeah. There has to be
Common
those moments.
shared interests and
Yep. You know, and it doesn't have to be across the board. Me and my wife do not have the same religion.
yeah.
We definitely don't have the same love of entertainment. You know, she's definitely into cop shows and that, and although she does love fantasy as well, so you know, there's plenty of shared interest there.
Yeah.
We both do have the same. There are some things that I think are going to be more difficult to pair off. We do have the same ideas on raising children.
Yes.
I think if you have opposite ways of how you're going to raise your children, that's a cantankerous.
You probably want to have a conversation about that.
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, because you take that very personal from both sides. They're
Yeah,
your
you
children.
probably want to have a conversation about whether you want children at
Well,
all,
that's a
like
part of it too.
early on.
So yeah, you know, all of that. But yeah, so you need I'm on board with that. I already said, I mean, the funny thing is I met my wife because my friend was trying to date her. My best friend was trying to date her. So I spent a year trying to help him date her because he had never had a girlfriend before ever.
Yeah.
And so it ended up with first I gave him advice. I mean, I was the perfect Casanova. First I gave him advice, that didn't work. So I owned a computer company at the time, and I was taking like 40 people out every week to do something. Like we'd go out to dinner, or we'd go out to movies or whatever, and I just pay for everything. And so I just started inviting her to that. And so that put us in this group environment, and then that didn't work. And so eventually I just invited her and my friend over to my house every Sunday, and we did something. We went hiking, or we did a bike run, or we did whatever. Um, and so for a year, I tried to play Casanova to get them together. And turns out he didn't do any of it. She didn't even know he was trying to date her. Like he did none of my advice. He was in our wedding. So, you know, it
If you
worked out, I
don't
guess.
got no game, don't come crying to me. Like,
Yeah. I mean, I did nothing. I mean, that's the thing. I'm a very honorable person. So she
yeah,
was just a dude to me that
yeah,
whole time. And then how it actually happened is there was one Sunday she showed up because it wasn't even an invite at that point. It was just show up at Drake's house.
yeah,
You know, every Sunday at 1, we're going to go do something. We don't know what, we're going to go do something.
yeah.
And so she showed up, and we waited around for my friend. And I finally called him. I was like, what's going on? He's like, oh, I don't feel well today. And so me and Joy went out and did something because
Yeah,
we were
that's what
friends.
you plan. Yeah,
She was still just a dude to me, but we were
yeah.
friends. So we did something. And then the next week, same thing. She showed up. He didn't. I called him up, and he was like, yeah, I just gave up. I mean, that's never going to happen. I'm done. I'm like, you're done. You're completely done. And then it was like, oh, look
Well,
at
in
that. She's
that
a
case,
girl. Didn't even realize it. So, so yeah.
yeah.
And then our first date was March 8th. I asked her to marry me on March 8th, and we got married on March 8th. So, you know,
Yeah.
every single one. A little bit more funny to that story. I probably shouldn't take the time to tell it, but it is funny. So March 8th in Louisiana was Ash Wednesday
Mm-hmm.
in New Orleans,
I,
which is the day after Fat Tuesday. There's no
I.
hotels anywhere. And she's like, we're not getting married on March 8th. We'll get married on March 10th. It's a Friday. I'm like, no, because I'm the romantic in our relationship. And I'm like, no, March 8th, first date. Asked you to marry me. She's like, it's Ash Wednesday in New Orleans. There's no hotels for anybody. We cannot get married on that day. And so she didn't fight hard. But about a couple months later, we were talking to somebody, and they're like, oh, you just got married. What day did you get married? And I went March 10th. And she looked at me like, what? You fought? What? And I was like, oh, right. It was March 8th. Sorry. And then like 3 months later, somebody met someone. Oh, you guys just got married. When did you get married? And I was like, March 10th. It's like, what? And then I had to like, and I did it a couple other times. There was a couple times in a row. I kept saying March 10th, March 10th. And I still struggle with this to this day because I had gotten married on March 10th, just not to her.
It's not to her.
And I didn't, I mean, because me and my first wife, we had no kids. We had no nothing. We were very short marriage. We were too young. We were too stupid. We were basically boyfriend and girlfriend with a paper. So when we split, we just cut the
Yeah,
paper. That's all it was. There was nothing.
yeah.
And so I didn't remember. I didn't remember that I get married March 10th. I had no idea. Like that whole different life. And
Yeah.
so now I'm like, yeah, I bet you're happy that I fought for that, because she probably would. I mean, she would have never known, because I would have never remembered.
Yeah.
But still, it probably would have made her very mad that we got married on the same day that I had already gotten married on. But anyway, we didn't. It was March 8th. But so that's a
Someday.
much slower burn. And actually, from what I understand, and again, I've been out of romance for a while, the slow burn romance is supposedly making a comeback.
So
So
they
why do you
say.
think that
And
is?
I think I think slow burn romances are making a comeback because of Frozen. I think Frozen really opened the door. Because what did Queen Elsa or Elsa say to her little sister? You can't marry someone that you've just met.
Yeah,
I mean, and she had a point, especially that dude. He was bad news.
yeah,
Like, he blew in like a whole heap of bad news.
yeah,
Um, but the the slower burn romances, the more take your time to meet somebody, you know, like as opposed to fall in love, get married, I think is making a comeback because it is more real to people's experience. And it's more real, especially now in this day and age. If you think about, society's changes. And I mean, I know we talk about a lot of it, but I mean, a lot of things have changed in society. Among other things, the ages we get married at, the ages we have children at, and so on. Um, and that is because our lives are longer. I mean, everything's long. The medical profession has extended our reach and, all of these things, and it makes changes to society.
yeah.
And so people are no longer like meeting somebody at, you know, 16, 17, 18, 20, 24, and going like, I'm gonna be with you for the rest of my life. They're meeting somebody at like 30, and marrying then. And you're at that age, you're over the hormone jump.
Right.
Like,
Your
and
brain is
and so
finally
you're
developed at 25.
yeah, yeah, because your brains is developed. So you become your romance becomes more a thing of like, okay, so is my baggage, because at 30 you also have a lot more baggage than a 16-year-old. You have a lot of baggage at 30 that you did not have at 16, right? At 16, you've got very minimal baggage. When you move in together, it's very, very easy to get along, right? And you kind of grow up together. But at 30, you come with baggage. So the question at 30 is when you're scoping each other out, you're wondering, does my baggage match yours? Are we gonna find each other? If our baggage is rotating together on an airport like luggage belt, is it the same color, or are we talking like dramatically different baggage that clashes? And every time we get into an argument, we're going to be slinging rucksacks at each other's heads, Like, these are questions you then need to answer. And you can't do that in a fast romance. And I think that because of that, because our society has changed in this manner, the slow burn romance is way more popular
Right.
than the like.
Yeah. The funny thing is the other romance arc in Genesis is both.
Yeah.
Malant steps off of the boat and the chick is there to meet him, and she's like, I'm so doing you. And he's like, what? No, whoa, what? And it's like, she just constantly is like, we're doing this, and he's like, I don't even, what, no, that's what that's too I don't even know what. And so it takes the whole novel before he finally is like, all right, maybe, yeah, no, this is. Whereas she's from literally jump, she eyes him up and down and she's like, all right. So yeah, I've got both in that same relationship.
But yeah, so yeah, it's that's why I think slow burn's making a comeback.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
I like the slow burn. I like I think it is more realistic for humanity. The problem with the love at first sight, there love at first sight exists. It's called hormones and physical attraction for the most part. I mean, nobody goes, I just met you and wow, your intelligence is so deep and you really reach me on a very deep soulful level. Like, no, that's not there yet. It's usually,
you you
you're
don't know
hot.
that person well enough to know their soul.
Right. It's usually, I'm horny, you're hot, let's bone.
Yeah,
And, you happen to be the first person I bone, so we're just gonna stay together now.
yeah.
Those relationships more times than not do not work out. So your sister's is very,
I know. No, I
lucky.
know. I know. They are actually the exception. Most
But I also
relationships.
guarantee, and I don't know them at all,
Yeah.
obviously, but I also would be willing to bet. I guess I shouldn't say I guarantee. I would be willing to bet they also have worked for their, it hasn't just been
Oh yeah, of
always
course.
easy.
No,
It's
of
been,
course.
and I
Every
think,
relationship is work.
well, I think
Like,
that's one of the reasons why we have such a high divorce rate these days is that everyone thinks that, oh, they're just going to fall in love and everything's going to be great. And so you hit that first time where it's like, wait a minute, you're different than me. You're a different human being and have different thoughts. Well, screw you. Like, that's not what I signed up for. And so they
no,
get divorced.
I don't know. I don't know about that, but every relationship takes work.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you fall in love at first sight. It doesn't matter if you have a slow burn. Like every relationship takes maintenance, takes work, takes effort. You
Yeah.
get into situations where you get irritated, and that should be in your book as well. Like, you know,
Again, like you
people
said
do
in the
fight.
beginning, with the caveat of, is there time for it? Is
Yes,
it relevant? You know,
yes, of course.
all of that. But yes, 100% agree with all that.
Now, I do think that there is one cliche, one plot device, one trope that you should never, ever, ever use. I feel as strongly about this as I feel about flashbacks. Romance, tension, or plot trouble or conflict that is caused by poor communication. No, just no. I hate that.
Not that it doesn't happen.
I understand, but it is so dumb. Like that you can't just open your mouth and say, actually, this is what happened. Like, does it have to be a 3-week fight that rips you apart and sets up like it drives me insane. I can't.
So, yeah, so what we're talking about, and every sitcom will have this where you have like the opening scene where with the dude, he's at the office, red paint gets spilled all over him accidentally, his shirt is ruined. The only thing at the office is an old female blouse. He has to wear something. He puts it on. He goes home. He walks in the door, and the wife is like, "You're cheating on me, and you're wearing her shirt." And instead of going, "Okay, look, no, this is what happened," he goes, "Bah, bah, 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 bah," and then we have 30-minute episode of this thing that is dumb because
Yes.
somebody should just, and Ted Lasso, that's the one thing that I did love about Ted Lasso. It was like, oh, look, there's about to be this conflict happening. And then they go, oh, right, we're adults. So
Yeah.
listen to me. This is the way it happened. This is what's going on. Now, sometimes it was, and yes, I screwed him, like, or whatever. And yes, I did this bad thing to you.
Yeah.
And you're not going to forgive me for this. And, there was relationships broken up and all of that, but it was much more realistic as opposed to the dumb thing.
What I loved about Ted Lasso, what I absolutely loved, is that those people were adult, they were real, they had genuine conversations with each other.
And they had
They,
conflicts of interest and conflicts of
yeah,
motivations, and they fell to stupid desires that did hurt their relationships and all this other stuff. But at the end of
they
the day,
opened their mouths
yeah,
and talked to each other. Like even Robin Kaylee, right? At one point, she was like, "You don't talk," da, da, da. And he went away, and then he came back because he didn't talk. He was all like, and then eventually he came back, and he opened his mouth and he talked
yeah.
like an adult man. Yeah, like, it was fantastic. Um,
So my uncle is in town and his family, they're staying with us this week.
yeah,
He is a little older than me, not what you would call technically savvy.
yeah.
Doesn't use his phone very much, doesn't text or anything like that. I mean, while he was here, he just learned how to delete text messages. So he spent like 2 days deleting thousands and thousands of text messages. So I go to pick him up from the airport. He's
Yeah.
supposed to land at 11:30. I'm there at 11:30. I tell him I will meet you at this spot because he has no
Mm.
luggage and they're only coming in for a couple of days. I'm like, I'll meet you here. So I get there and I'm looking at the arrival board and his plane landed 20 minutes ago. it just way early and it's already here. And I don't see my uncle. And I'm like, huh. So finally I text him, are you guys on the ground? No response. No response. No response for about 8 minutes. I finally then get a response, just over moving walkway. I don't know what that means. As all airports, there are many levels, and there's many moving walkways. I don't get it. So I text back, outside, no response. I text back, I don't know what that means. No response. I call, I get voicemail. Now it turns out he wasn't getting these messages. For whatever reason, his phone wasn't getting them. But still, when a little while later, he finally calls me and he's like, yeah, we went over the walkway that you talked about that's outside, and we're on the other side of that. That's what I said in my text. I'm like, that's not what you said in your text. And so I was frustrated because of lack of communication.
Yeah.
So it does happen, is my point.
It does, but it doesn't cause a 30-minute fight.
Right.
It causes okay, we've sorted out the misunderstanding. Yeah. And while I'm a little annoyed with my uncle, who's a dumbass with his phone, it's not
the end of the world. Hug you, happy to see you. Great, you're in town. Now let's go home and hang out and have fun. Because he's actually more my brother than my uncle. We're 5 years apart, and I was raised by my grandmother, his mother. So we really were raised in the same household, and we're 5 years apart. So like there are siblings that are all further apart than we are. So it's much more like a brother relationship than anything else. But anyway, that was caused by lack of communication. It took us a couple minutes to finally work it out. And a lot of it also had to do with technology. He did not get my text message. Like, he showed me his phone. He's like, I didn't get those. And I'm like, well, because that's happened to me and my wife too, where it's like I text her and it's like, damn you, why won't you answer me? And then later it's like, I didn't get them. And then you go on. It's a part of life. But when you set up your entire plot because the person just wouldn't open their stinking mouth, like,
don't do that.
And you can do it more realistic. So, this is an older movie. It's from the 80s, but it's Tom Hanks was in a movie called The Bachelor. No, Bachelor Party. And so his fiance, his best friend, is one of those party boys, and he's like, oh, we're gonna do an amazing bachelor party. It's gonna have hookers and donkeys and fire trucks and booze, and like literally that was one of the lines that he rattled off, all this crazy stuff, and it ended up being in the movie. All of it was there. And his fiance was like, no strippers. And he's like, no, I know, my friend, we're not gonna do it. It's gonna be a very chill bachelor party. And of course the movie's called Bachelor Party, so it's obviously not gonna happen. But he gets mad because he makes his friend promise no strippers. And then when he gets there, they usher him in and there's strippers in the room. And he's mad. He's like, I told you no, I didn't want this. And so they kind of trip him up and push him into a chair, and then a stripper sits on his lap. And of course, that's when fiance walks in. Like, so we just watched him fighting for this.
Yeah.
Now, she doesn't say anything. She sees, because there's a stripper now grinding on his lap. That's more than what I was talking about getting paint on your shirt. So she just turns around and storms off, which she should. Like, 100%, that is a believable misunderstanding. But what he doesn't do is just go, but, oh, well, I'll just sit here while this girl grinds on my lap. He shoves her off and he takes off running for his fiance. Now, she's gone before he gets there. So that's using a legitimate plot device. She jumps back in the cab and she takes off and he chases down like, no. So like, yes, that is lack of communication, but it's very believable. It's like, oh yeah, no, that moment, if I walk down on him like that, I'd be pissed. I'm not going to wait around to get an answer. I'm just going to be furious. If the cab's waiting for me, I'm jumping in it. I'm gone. Like, all of that is believable. So, there are ways to do the lack of communication cause the problem. It just needs to be smarter than my paint on the shirt example, because so many of them do that stupid stuff where it's just an easy, actually, let me explain.
Yes, exactly.
There's nothing going on. There's no stripper in my lap. Like, it's just us, and I can just talk to you about it. And that's what they did with Ted Lasso. There were some times where they had some communication breakdown, but it was much more believably done.
And it was normally fairly serious stuff going on.
Mhm.
Like, it was normally like not a joke.
Right. Somebody
Yeah,
actually did something to hurt somebody
yeah,
else. A
yeah.
boneheaded move. Or not
Yeah.
not all. The episode that killed me, and I've never watched past that, and I need to, um, is the scene where the reporter comes into the gay bar with the gay soccer player
Mhm.
and basically walks up and says something to him, and the soccer player is like, oh crap, this reporter is going to out me and I can't be outed. And he's like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, I'm in the wrong bar, I didn't know. And he takes off running.
Yeah.
However, even though he does that, what does the reporter do? Chases him down like, dude, no,
I'm
i'm
not.
i'm
Yeah.
gay as well, I get it, I'm not going to do anything. And then even there's some tension of, I don't know if I believe him, is he lying to me,
Mhm.
is he this? And then it ends up being this beautiful heartwarming discussion of what it's like to be gay in a world that you're not really allowed to be gay.
Yeah.
And so it was wonderful. It's a great,
Mhm.
great human piece
Yeah.
that could have been written anyway. And it could have definitely been for just comedic value. It's like, oh, he runs off and he doesn't, we could have done all sorts of things with that. But
Yeah. But they really did do the communication aspect so well.
yeah,
And in the relationships that are toxic, like there is a relationship in Ted Lasso that is toxic, and that is Keely's relationship with a girl. That girl that she gets into a relationship with it's a very, very toxic relationship. You don't realize it at the start, but at the end, it is abundantly clear what's going on there. And there is breakdowns of communication all the time. And you can absolutely see it.
yeah. And that's the same episode with uh the gay bar that I was talking about.
Yeah,
And
see,
that's
I
the
think,
story arc that broke me, because that's
yeah.
that's a 400 foot of rope. It comes out of nowhere. It's like
See, it didn't
last
come out of
episode.
nowhere for me because I picked up that Keely is bisexual. Like, I picked it up way back
Sure,
when in like the episode 2.
that's not, you can be bisexual.
Yeah.
She had finally worked out a relationship, and it was like, oh, this is going to be great. Now we get to actually enjoy it. There was no reason for it. She's finally understood what she wants. She finally knows she wants Roy. She finally unshackles herself from the pretty boy of whatever his name,
Yeah,
uh
Jamie.
Jamie. She
Yeah.
finally grows up. She finally matures in the last episode. And in this episode, she's just gonna sleep with some random chick.
No, Roy broke up with her. Remember, Roy was like, no, you need to go be free because he was having a brain fart of note.
But still, her character arc, she was comfortable with it. She should have, in my opinion, I would have had her
Okay.
then fight for that relationship, because
Yeah.
she
But
just realized, no, it's Roy. And you're right. Roy did say, I need a break.
yeah.
At that point, that character's like, no, I just finally figured out what I want. I finally grew up. I
Yeah.
realized I screwed up. What do I got to do to fix this? And that's not sleeping with someone else. Like, you don't fix that thing that you finally
Well,
learned that you want by sleeping with someone else.
I mean, rebound relationships is
But she wasn't in a rebound. I don't
100%
think they
it.
allowed her to be crushed. If they had allowed her to be crushed and allowed them to actually be separate for a while, and her realize that she can't, like, have her try to make
No,
amends
no,
and
no,
it
no.
fails.
No, no, no. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay, so I have a friend who I call her a serial monogamist. She will break up with a guy, and then she'll say to me, Marie, make sure I don't get into another relationship. I cannot be in another relationship. I have to start being by myself. I'm not joking. 3 days later, she's holding some dude's hand. I'm like, what is this? Did we not just have this conversation? No, she says, but I'm so in love. Or some girl's hand, because like me, she's bisexual. So it's just one after the other,
Yeah.
right? There are people that are 100% like that. They go from one relationship to the next.
The oddest relationship I ever was a friend of mine. His girlfriend never cheated on him.
Yeah.
She had sex with somebody else every weekend, but she never cheated on him, because every Friday she broke up with him. And every Monday she got back together with him.
Okay.
And like 2 or 3 weekends a month, she would do this. And I just
Okay.
never understood why he would,
Yeah.
because it went on. Well, I mean, I was friends with him for probably about a year,
Yeah.
and it went on the entire year
Yeah.
that I was there. I hated that girl. I've got a really big problem with infidelity.
Yeah.
That's what ended my first relationship, because she
Yeah.
cheated on me a lot. And so it is, well, it was funny. Just complete side note. One of my friends was living with us, and he was actually betting another one of our friends' wives.
Mm.
He was way more afraid of me finding out about their relationship than the husband. Like way, like off the charts more, because he was living with us, and the husband actually lived in a different town. And when
Mm.
she would come in to be with him, they would go get a hotel room. He would not bring her to, because it was
Yeah.
my house, but he was renting a
Yeah.
room
Yeah.
in it. He would not bring her there. He would not. They didn't go out to dinner with us. We didn't. I didn't even like, because he was
Mhm.
terrified of me finding out about it. Um, because yeah,
Yeah.
I've got a problem with
Yeah.
infidelity.
But yeah. So I mean, like that. Kaylee,
Roy,
Roy actually broke up with Kaylee, and then
I do remember that now
but that
that
was
you
at the end of the previous season. Then
right.
in the next season, she picked up with this chick,
That's
and
another
then
reason
you
why it
find
came
out
out of
about this.
nowhere to me, is because it to me the seasons were contiguous, so there was really
Yes,
no time between the
there was
two.
no break for you. Yeah.
Right. Well, no, I mean, even for the characters, there's no real break. It's just
No, I know, but I mean, like in your head, like she
right.
had
It
it
was
was just
tomorrow.
yeah,
Yeah. I realized for the writers, they had a
yeah,
season, they closed, they took a break, they came back, they
yes,
started writing. I realized for them it's a long time,
yeah,
but in the story, it just
yeah,
happened yesterday.
yeah,
And since I binge watched it, like all of us
yeah.
do, it was yesterday. Actually, it was probably half an hour ago.
Yeah.
Wasn't
Half
even
an hour ago.
yesterday.
How did you find a new person so fast?
Right. So I yeah.
But yeah, to get back to romance. So great, well-written relationships.
Yeah,
I
let's
will
let's
go
end on that.
first. Um, so I'm gonna go to Jacqueline Carey, all of them. All the relationships she's written, but the most famous one, without a doubt, is Phaedra and Jocelyn's relationship in the first Shield trilogy. It is one hell of a slow burn romance, but what is beautiful about it is that it's like a Romeo and Juliet situation. They're, different, very different worldviews. Their love is forbidden, all of that kind of things. But um she doesn't force it to tragedy. It's a very beautiful, happy ending relationship that leaves you extremely satisfied, but it has all of the ups and downs, falls, rises, all of them.
Here's
Times
here's
when you
one.
think they're going to break up.
Here's one that I don't think that we would ever even discuss in this context, but it popped into my head, and it is something both of us know. Because when you were doing that, I was like, well, I haven't read Jacqueline Carey. And then I was like, well, there's movies. And I was like, I really hate that I always use movies for it. And I was like, is there any type of literary thing? And I was like, there's actually a really amazing romance that both of us have read.
Mm-hmm.
Carl and Andre
Yes,
from the Guardian of the Flame series.
from the Guardian of the Flame. Yes, because they start at the beginning. Carl is really hot for her.
Yeah.
And then the whole disaster happens for those of you who haven't read the book. Um, they get transported to a D&D world, and
Oh,
they are their
oh,
character.
that's not the horrible incident that happens.
No, no,
It's
but
it's the,
yeah, that's how it starts, right? And then, like, their relationship basically goes nowhere for a while.
well, she sleeps with his best friend.
Yeah,
Um,
because they're in a freaky D&D world. She's never played D&D. He literally that day convinced her to come to this game, draw up her first character. She has never in her life played this game. And then she's transported into the world. Like,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
And he he basically tries to own her, but that's a
Yes.
different thing. So in this thing, they actually have both minds in their head. They have the character mind and their real world mind. And so the character mind is this barbarian type thing. And he's like, no, I own her. She's my woman. Why would you treat her any different? And then, of course, the modern day man brain is like,
Yeah.
that's not how we treat women. And
Yes.
so there's this conflict between the two.
Mm.
And in the beginning, when the character mind is stronger, it kind of wins over, and that pushes her away, obviously, because she's a modern woman, and it's like, you're not going to treat me like I'm property. So she ends
Yeah.
up sleeping with his best friend, and then something else even more horrendous happens.
Yes.
And then they go through a bunch of other tragedies, but eventually their relationship turns into this marriage that is incredibly strong and incredibly
Yeah.
deep and incredibly loving between the two. And they have all this baggage together, but all of it disappears as they mature and grow through this fantasy world.
Yeah. And their marriage forms the heart of the eventual kind of country that they establish.
Mhm.
The town that they establish and so on. It's so well done. It's such a, like, it builds one on top of the other, and it has its setbacks and it has its growth moments. It's really fantastically well
Yeah.
done. Yeah.
A lot less toxic than the Lannister relationship.
Well,
I think it's a little more wholesome than that.
you know, the Lannisters are an interesting bunch of rednecks.
100%. I'm a redneck. I will take that. I will 100% take that. We got off topic, but
Yeah.
I'll take that because I didn't get to it, but I was going to pick on you earlier about well, I mean, you guys do marry the person you hate the least. So I don't remember what it was, but it was something earlier. I was like, oh, that's gonna be a great joke. And then the
Yeah.
conversation just meandered. Um, so yeah, no, I will take that. I am a redneck, and the Lannisters is a very redneck relationship.
Very
100%.
redneck relationship.
Very trailer park, white trash.
She
100%.
ain't good enough for her family. She ain't good enough for
Yeah.
ours.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. So it bees that way. But yeah, so those are, I mean, there's tons of good relationship. We talked about Ted Lasso. I think there's great relationships in there. My
Yes.
favorite, um, almost love at first sight, but also a little bit of slow burn, is the relationship between the boss woman and
Yes.
that dude that rescues her when she falls into the
The
channel there
Dutch,
in uh
Holland,
Holland. Yeah,
in Amsterdam. Yeah. Yeah.
Amsterdam. That's the word I was looking for. Um, like that relationship,
Mm.
and also it was nice because they took this situation that could be creepy and predatory,
Yes.
and they made this man a
A
hundred
nice
percent
man.
above board.
Yeah.
100%. Dude, I am like, because she is like, oh crap, I'm in this vulnerable
Yeah.
situation. And he's like, yes, you are. And
Yeah.
you could not be safer. It is
Yeah.
100% fine. Like, whatever you
Yeah.
want, I'm here to cater to that.
I will say it again about Ted Lasso, is they absolutely have men who are horrible and women
Yes.
who are horrible too. They
Yes.
absolutely do have those. Like Rebecca's Rebecca's
Friend.
the boss lady. Her
Rebecca, yeah.
her husband that kicks the whole thing off,
But even
right?
her best friend,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, she is toxic.
Yeah.
The one that comes in, the tertiary character
Yes.
that comes in, the childhood friend.
Yeah. Well,
So
she's not really, but yeah. So anyway,
not as toxic as the husband.
yeah, the husband is very,
He's the
very,
villain.
but he's the villain. Every, like, the other men that you encounter and the other people they're people.
Mhm.
They're genuinely normal people who are not they're people. They're nice
To an
people.
extent. I mean, so Jamie,
Yeah, but Jamie's growth arc is
but
so
that's
amazing.
where it gets unrealistic. Now
Yeah.
it's great for stories. So like this
Yeah.
happened in the writer's room just the other day, last week.
Yeah.
So this one character is a narcissist like Jamie. I'm
Mm.
the center of the universe. if you either have sex with me because I'm awesome, and if you don't, there's 50 other women that's going to have sex with me because I'm awesome. So I don't need you. Even though I love you, and even though technically you're probably the best choice for me, I don't care. I'm a narcissist. It's all about me. And then his growth arc is amazing. His growth arc is amazing.
Yeah.
But in that room, there was kind of a similar kind of situation, and one of the critiquers is a psychiatrist. He's a trained psychiatrist. He's retired now, I think, but that was his thing. And he's like, I got a problem with this because narcissists don't ever change.
100%. But I don't think Jamie was a narcissist. Like, I don't think he's an actual,
Right.
like the word narcissist is
Right.
thrown around a lot. But
he was narcissistic because of the situation he was put into, from rags to riches and being the center of the universe. But that's not who he was at the core.
He wasn't diagnosably a
and that's what this guy
narcissist
was
in
talking
that
about.
terms. Because, like, and that's why he could have a growth arc.
Right.
Like,
100%.
if you want a real, like an actual written narcissist, The Devil Wears Prada, right? Meryl Streep's character, 100% a narcissist.
Is that where the line "no wire hangers"? Is that where the line "no wire hangers" comes from, or is that a different movie?
It might be, but that is where, like, the long rant of the fashion industry and the impact that it has and all the things. And that's also
I'm pretty sure that's also the one where she beats her children because they have a wire hanger, their clothes on a wire hanger.
Possibly, yeah.
Beats them with the wire hanger, screaming, no wire hangers.
No, she doesn't. You never see the children in that. But that is a narcissist.
And it may not even be Meryl Streep, but I just, for whatever reason, that line popped in my head. Tell us down below what movie I'm thinking of. It's some female actor back in the 50s or 60s or 70s, and there's a scene where she beats her children, screaming,
no, Devil Wears Prada is a more
from.
recent movie than that. It's an Anne Hathaway, Meryl Streep movie. I think it was made in 2000 somewhere.
Okay.
Very good. Highly recommend. But that character's a narcissist, and she has no growth arc because narcissists don't grow. Jamie is not a narcissist. He's
not. But my point is, even with a narcissist character, even though it's not realistic that narcissists actually change, they always blame everyone else. When you show them what they're doing that's wrong, they just go, yeah, but it's because of that.
Yeah.
Or because of them, or because of this other thing. It's never me. I'm not the problem. You're the problem.
Yes.
That's realistic. But first of all, most narcissists aren't going to read your stuff. And second of all, you're not trying to change a narcissist with your story. You're trying to show people that are not narcissists like Jamie that maybe they're on the wrong path, and maybe they should think about it and grow as a person.
Also, narcissism is rarer than you think. Like, people throw these terms around like they know what they mean, and they don't. Like,
well, the cool thing is that we have a flypaper that attracts them. Like, we don't have a lot of narcissist society because they're all politicians. Like, they have to become politicians. It's the only thing they can become. So,
no.
It's a great way to just weed them out.
Nah, I don't know. My politicians are okay, but that's okay. That's a different thing.
Just my loathing for politicians showing through.
I know. But so I think that, getting back to romance, I think that relationship with Rebecca, I have watched the whole season, so I can definitively say that relationship with Rebecca is fantastic.
That's what I'm hoping. Like, it was such a great setup that I'm just like, I am so excited to see this relationship blossom. I'll get back to it. I've just been so busy. That is one show I want to finish.
I also, in that same show, like, I loved a lot of the relationships. I loved a lot of I loved the relationship between the gay guy and his boyfriend when that eventually comes out, when he's, when that whole thing eventually comes out.
Yes, I was out by then too.
So there's a lot.
But the relationship between Roy and Jamie, which is more of a mentor-mentee, father-son relationship, that's brilliant.
Brotherly love. It's a fantastic.
So I actually see them more as fatherly love.
Yeah, but I mean family love, not eros.
Right.
The other one, the other type of love.
Right.
So it's not a romantic love, but it's a very, very deep relationship, and it's so well done. If you want a masterclass in writing relationships, go watch Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
It's stunning.
But I mean, there's so many other
fantastic.
There's so many good representations of growth in characters and relationship. I mean, one of my favorite chick flicks is What Women Want with Mel Gibson. It's where he gets this power to hear inside of women's thoughts. Like it's so well done. Miss Congeniality was another one.
I'll tell you what I think is relationship goals. What I think is a really, really fantastic relationship is the relationship between Morticia and Gomez Adams.
Yeah, you'd mentioned this pre talk.
That relationship is fantastic. Yeah. It's and it's because Gomez loves everything, but he also loves Morticia very deeply, and she clearly loves him. And though they're freaky and they're weird and their relationship is all about the kink and the magic and the strangeness and everything else, they are so in love with each other, and it is so obvious.
I would love to see their bedroom. It's got to be the weirdest, kinkiest, sex dungeony thing.
But when they go to their kids' school, and their kids are doing this weird thing on stage, and the entire rest of the auditorium's quiet. The moment the kids finish, the whole Addams family gets up and they're all applauding, and it's so supportive.
Yeah, that was
fantastic.
That was a fantastically written family dynamic between all of them. And you still had you still had the sister and brother fighting, and picking each other and all of that. But yeah, it really was a well done.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great relationship.
Yep. So I mean, there's plenty of examples of some really well written stuff. I guess to kind of tie it all up in a bow and sum it all up, if you're gonna be writing a romance arc within your story that isn't a romance, make sure it doesn't overshadow, but you still have to give it enough room to breathe. Make sure you have believable characters, make sure you have believable motivations, make sure that you give time for the audience to see those meet cute moments so that you see their relationship actually developing. Give them complications, but don't be stupid about it. Make them more realistic. Did I miss anything? I feel like I did.
Put your heart into it.
Be realistic. And that's, you should do that with anything. I meant to say this earlier when you brought that up. I mean, I think the difference that separates really great writers from meh writers is really great writers have gotten over the fear of pouring their soul onto the page. And I get it. Every writer starts off this way where you're embarrassed and you're like, oh, but what if they judge me? And but they're going to judge you if you don't pour it onto the page. Yep. It's not going to impact them. But yeah, for romance, it's I want to say more critical, but it's just as critical. Everything is just as critical when it comes to just bearing your soul for the audience. That does separate really great writers and really great stories from meh stories.
And I think that is a good note on which to end this episode. We will see you soon for another one.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. This is Marie Mullaney, your co-host on this literary adventure. Our goal is to provide you with valuable insights and discussions on writing. If you believe in our mission, please like and subscribe our podcast. Sharing our episodes with your community not only helps us grow, but also contributes to a richer, more diverse conversation about storytelling. We appreciate your support. For a deeper understanding of the topics we've discussed, head over to Just in Time Worlds on YouTube. It is a treasure trove where fantasy meets history and science. Every Tuesday, you'll find new videos that delve into the intricacies of world building, drawing from our rich real-world history. Whether you're a writer, a role player, or just a fantasy enthusiast, Just in Time Worlds offers unique insights that will enrich your perspective. Check it out and join the journey of crafting incredible worlds.
If you are ready to take your writing to the next level and work with a group of highly motivated, dedicated writers who are all working to not only improve their writing, but improve your writing, plus you get to work with me on a weekly basis, then I'll encourage you to check out writersroom.us. This is a website that I have created that I really wish I had 30 years ago. It's everything a writer needs to become a better writer. Not only do we do weekly critique sessions, both from other members as well as me, we have daily writing sessions. I do monthly classes, Q&As. We have activities. I do all sorts of learning exercises, such as I do a quarterly writing prompt contest and just tons and tons and tons of things. So if you're ready to get serious about your writing and you want to actually finish that novel and have a chance of it being published, then I encourage you to head on over to the writer's room and join me there. And as a special promotion for listeners of Releasing Your Dragon, and as a special promotion for listeners of Releasing Your Inner Dragon, I'll go one step more. If you would like to get 50% off for 3 months, reach out to me. There's a million ways you can do that. You can do it through starvingwriterstudio.com, drakeu.com, any of my social medias such as LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, X, whatever. Reach out to me, say that you would like to check out the Writer's Room for 50% off, and I will send you a link that will allow you to do just that. So hopefully you're ready to start getting serious about writing, and I'll see you in the Writer's Room.